The thing about killing someone at a black market auction is that it ruins everyone's evening. Kael Mordain had 3 rules for survival in Ascendium's criminal underworld. Never trust a blood mage, never bet what you can't afford to lose, and never, under any circumstances, let them see you bleed. And tonight, he was about to break all 3. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe for more support, and comment about your favorite character. The auction house occupied the gutted remains of what had once been a cathedral, back before the Convergence shattered the veil between the magical and mundane worlds. Now, its soaring Gothic arches house something far less holy, the largest illegal artifact trade in the Western Hemisphere. Kael moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his tailored black suit and silver cufflinks marking him as someone of consequence. At 26, he'd built a reputation that made hardened criminals step aside when he passed. They should have stepped farther. The auction hall glittered with wealth and danger in equal measure. Enchanted chandeliers, likely stolen from the Grand Archives, cast dancing shadows across faces Kael recognized from wanted posters and corporate boards alike. In Ascendium, the line between legitimate power and criminal enterprise was drawn in disappearing ink. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, her voice magically amplified. A genuine Corsair's compass, guaranteed to find anything you've lost. Anything at all. Kael's jaw tightened. That wasn't just any compass. It was the compass. The one that could track the Sanguine Seal, the artifact binding the curse that was slowly killing him. He'd spent 6 months following whispers and bribes to this moment. The curse had started simply enough. Nightmares that left him gasping, veins burning like liquid fire. Then came the blackouts, the lost time, the growing certainty that something ancient and hungry was waking up inside him. The Oracle of South Street, a half-drunk seer who'd survived 3 assassination attempts and a tax audit, had told him the Sanguine Seal was both his curse and his only cure. A typical magical catch-22. 50,000, someone called. 75, Kael countered smoothly. The bidding escalated. Across the room, a woman in crimson caught his attention, not for her beauty, though she had that in dangerous abundance, but for the way her fingers traced patterns in the air. Subtle, prepared, a combatant's tells. Their eyes met. Hers were the color of winter storms, gray and merciless, set in a face that belonged on ancient coins, all sharp cheekbones and patrician features. Black hair fell in a practical braid over one shoulder. She wore tactical gear like evening wear, and Kael's trained eye caught the telltale bulge of at least 4 concealed weapons. She smiled. It was not a friendly expression. 200,000, she called, never breaking eye contact with Kael. Well, shit. 250, Kael responded. 300. The auctioneer's magically enhanced voice crackled with greed. 300,000 to the lady in red. Do I hear? 500,000, Kael said flatly. A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd. That was serious money, even in this room full of people who bought and sold lives like stocks. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Calculation. Re-evaluation. She tilted her head fractionally, studying him with the intensity of a surgeon selecting where to cut. 501, she said. It wasn't about the money anymore. Kael recognized the game. She was testing him, seeing how desperate he was. In the criminal underworld, desperation was blood in the water. 1 million, Kael said. The room went silent. Even the auctioneer looked surprised. The woman in red smiled wider. You must want it very badly. You have no idea. Oh, I think I do. She leaned back against a pillar with casual confidence. 1,200,000. Kael's mind raced. He could go higher. His family's wealth could cover it. But that would deplete resources he needed for the actual retrieval of the seal. And something about this woman's demeanor suggested she'd keep bidding just to watch him squirm. Time for a different approach. Forgive me, Kael said, pitching his voice for her ears alone as he crossed the room with predatory grace. But I don't believe we've been introduced. Kael Mordain. He extended his hand. Up close she was even more striking, and more dangerous. Her skin bore the faint silvery traceries of old magical scars, the kind you got from surviving things that should have killed you. She smelled like gunpowder and jasmine. She regarded his offered hand like it might bite. I know who you are, Mordain. heir to the Mordain consortium, youngest board member in the company's history, and according to rumors, a man who can get anything for the right price. Her accent was difficult to place, a melodic blend that suggested extensive travel or careful training to obscure origins. My reputation precedes me. And you are? Uninterested in pleasantries. But after a calculated pause, she shook his hand. Her grip was firm, her palm calloused. A fighter's hand. Lyra Ashenheart. The name meant nothing to Kael, which meant everything. In his world, anonymity was either a sign of irrelevance or exceptional skill at staying off the radar. Judging by the way she carried herself, it wasn't the former. Lovely to meet you, Ms. Ashenheart. Now, about that compass. Is mine, she finished. I need it. Coincidentally, so do I. Then we have a problem. Her hand hadn't left his. Kael became acutely aware of the warmth of her skin, the way her pulse beat steady and controlled against his palm. Perhaps we could discuss. The explosion cut him off. The western wall of the auction house detonated inward in a cascade of stone and fire. Kael's combat instincts took over. He yanked Lyra down as debris rained overhead, his body covering hers in a move that was equal parts protective and tactical. She smelled like jasmine and danger, and for one absurd heartbeat, his curse-addled brain noticed how perfectly she fit against him. Then she kneed him in the ribs and rolled free, coming up with a gun in each hand. "Thanks for the cover," she said with dark amusement, "but I can handle myself." Through the settling dust, figures emerged. Not just any figures, Sanctum Enforcers, the magical government's elite strike force. They wore tactical gear that shimmered with protective enchantments, and their weapons hummed with enough magical energy to level a city block. "This is a raid," the lead enforcer announced. "Everyone on the ground. This auction is operating in violation of the Arcane Commerce Act and—" Several things happened simultaneously. A rival crime lord named Vex, who'd been eyeing the compass himself, decided that prison wasn't on his agenda, and opened fire with a wand that shot bursts of corrupted lightning. The enforcers returned fire with standard-issue spell guns. Half the auction attendees tried to flee, the other half decided to fight. And somewhere in the chaos, someone with more bravery than sense set off a smoke bomb. Kael's world narrowed to survival. He moved through the chaos with brutal efficiency, using a combination of hand-to-hand combat and the telekinetic abilities his family's bloodline granted. A charging thug found himself thrown into a pillar. An enforcer who got too close received an elbow to the throat. And through it all, he tracked Lyra Ashenheart. She moved like violence set to music, fluid, precise, utterly lethal. Her guns barked twice, and 2 enforcers went down with non-lethal shots to the kneecaps. She vaulted over a pew, slid under a burst of magical fire, and came up shooting. Whatever training she'd received, it was world-class. Their eyes met across the smoke-filled chaos. She grinned. Actually grinned. And Kael found himself grinning back despite the insanity of the situation. Then he saw where she was headed. The auctioneer's podium, where the Corsair's compass sat in its protective case. "Oh, no, you don't," Kael muttered. He sprinted across the room using his telekinesis to create a path through the fighting. Lyra saw him coming and accelerated, her movements taking on desperate speed. They reached the podium simultaneously, hands closing on the case from opposite sides. "Let go," Lyra growled. "Not a chance." "I will shoot you." "No, you won't. Bullets would damage the compass." She blinked, clearly not having expected actual logic in a moment like this. "I could shoot you somewhere non-vital. Romantic." An enforcer spell blast hit the podium, and suddenly they were both diving for cover, still clutching opposite ends of the case. They rolled together into the shelter of an overturned altar, bodies pressed close in the chusky, confined space. The case sat between them like a child they were both trying to kidnap. "This is ridiculous," Lyra panted. "Completely," Kael agreed. "But I'm not letting go. Neither am I." They stared at each other, faces inches apart, both breathing hard from exertion. This close, Kael could see flecks of silver in her gray eyes like stars in a winter sky. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart, see the faint scar that traced her left eyebrow. She was absolutely, undeniably beautiful, and trying to steal the one thing that might save his life. "Truce?" Kael offered. "We get out of here together, split the compass?" "How do you split a compass?" "We figure that out when we're not about to be arrested or killed." Lyra's eyes narrowed, weighing the offer. Around them the battle raged. An enforcer shouted something about surrender. Vex's lightning was setting the ancient pews on fire. Fine, Lyra decided, but I'm keeping my guns pointed at you. I wouldn't have it any other way. They moved as one, a strange partnership born of necessity. Kael used his telekinesis to clear a path while Lyra provided covering fire, her shots surgical in their precision, always disabling, never killing. They fought their way toward a side exit, the compass case clutched between them. A massive enforcer blocked their path, his body enhanced with strength augmentation spells. End of the line, criminals. Lyra glanced at Kael. Together? Together. She went low while Kael went high. Her leg sweep caught the enforcer off balance while Kael's telekinetic strike hit him from the side. The big man went down like a felled tree. Not bad, Mordain, Lyra admitted. You're not terrible yourself, Ashenheart. They burst through the exit into the rain-slicked streets of Ascendium's Shadow Market district. The city sprawled before them in all its chaotic glory. Soaring skyscrapers embedded with magical wards. Streets where cars and flying carpets competed for space. Neon signs advertising everything from healing potions to digital curses. Behind them, the auction house was in flames, enforcers swarming like angry ants. My car's 2 blocks north, Kael said, already running. Mine's closer. Black motorcycle, corner of 5th and Shade. Of course you ride a motorcycle. They sprinted through the rain, taking turns holding the compass case while the other fended off pursuing enforcers. Lyra moved with the confidence of someone who knew these streets intimately, leading them through alleys and shortcuts that Kael, despite his resources, had never known existed. The motorcycle was exactly where she'd said, a sleek black Yamaha with subtle magical modifications that made the engine purr, with barely contained power. Get on, Lyra ordered, straddling the bike. I'm not sure. Would you prefer jail? Kael climbed on behind her, the compass case awkwardly wedged between them. The moment his arms wrapped around her waist to hold on, the motorcycle roared to life. They tore through the streets of Ascendium at speeds that would have been suicidal without magical assistance. Lyra drove like she fought, with absolute confidence and a complete disregard for conventional safety. They wove between cars, jumped a curb, and somehow ended up on a skyway meant for flying vehicles. You're insane, Kael shouted over the wind. You're just figuring that out? Lyra laughed, and the sound was wild and free. Behind them, enforcer vehicles gave chase, their sirens cutting through the night. Spellfire streaked past, close enough that Kael felt the heat. But Lyra was better than good. She was exceptional. She took them through the magical district, where reality bent in strange ways and traffic laws were more suggestions than rules. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, she pulled into an underground parking structure in the industrial quarter. The enforcers flew past overhead, their searchlights cutting through the rain. The motorcycle's engine ticked as it cooled. Neither of them moved for a long moment, both breathing hard, adrenaline still singing through their veins. Well, Lyra finally said, that was exciting. Kael laughed, surprised by the genuine amusement he felt. Is your life always like this? Usually it's more boring. You? I mostly attend board meetings. She twisted to look at him over her shoulder, one eyebrow raised. Board meetings that end in explosions and car chases? The interesting ones do. Their faces were close again, and Kael was struck by the absurdity of the situation. An hour ago, they'd been strangers. Now they'd fought their way through a raid, stolen a priceless magical artifact together, and were sitting on a motorcycle in a dark parking garage, bodies pressed together, sharing the one thing they'd both been willing to kill for. So, Lyra said quietly. About this compass. Yes, about that. Kael reluctantly released his hold on her waist and climbed off the bike. His curse chose that moment to flare, a lance of pain shooting through his chest. He gasped, stumbling. Lyra was off the bike in an instant, catching his arm. What's wrong? Nothing, I'm fine. The lie was automatic. You're a terrible liar for someone in your line of work. Her grip was strong, steadying. You're cursed. It wasn't a question. Kael looked at her sharply. How did you... I can see it. The way the magical energy flows around you, it's corrupted, twisted. Her expression was unreadable. How long do you have? The blunt question should have offended him. Instead, Kael found it refreshing. 3 months, maybe less. The curse is accelerating. And the compass? leads to something called the Sanguine Seal. It's supposed to be both the source of the curse and the cure. He laughed bitterly. Magical irony at its finest. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her hand still on his arm. Then, I need the compass to find my sister. Your sister? She went missing 6 months ago. I've tracked her movements to a black market dealer who specialized in magical artifacts that all connect to the Sanguine Seal. Lyra's voice was controlled, but Kael heard the pain beneath. I think whoever took her is using the seal for something. If I can find the seal... You find your sister, Kael finished. The pieces clicked together. We're looking for the same thing. Seems that way. They stared at each other in the dimness of the parking garage. Rain drummed against concrete above them. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Partners? Kael offered his hand for the second time that night. Lyra looked at it, then at him. I work alone. So do I. But we both need that compass, and we both need what it leads to. We're better off together than fighting each other every step of the way. I don't trust you. Good. I don't trust you either, but I respect your combat skills, and you clearly know your way around this city's underbelly better than I do. And you need my resources. Tracking the seal won't be cheap or easy. She studied him with those storm-gray eyes, weighing, calculating. Kael had negotiated with corporate raiders and crime lords, but something about Lyra's gaze made him feel exposed in a way that had nothing to do with magic. Fine, she finally said, shaking his hand. But I have rules. No betrayal, no lies, and if it comes down to it and we can only save one, the seal or my sister, I choose my sister. Understood. And if my curse accelerates to the point where I'm a danger, you put me down. Lyra's eyebrows rose. That's dark. I'm a pragmatist. Apparently so? She released his hand and Kael was surprised by the sense of loss. So, partner, what now? Kael pulled out his phone, a custom model with magical enhancements that made it impossible to hack. Now we use the compass to track the seal, and we figure out who else is looking for it, because that wasn't a routine enforcer raid. You noticed that too? Sanctum enforcers don't hit black market auctions. They go after terrorist cells and rogue mages. Someone with serious political power wanted that compass badly enough to burn the entire auction to get it. Lyra's expression turned grim. Which means we just made very powerful enemies. Welcome to my normal Tuesday. She laughed, a real laugh this time, and Kael felt something warm unfurl in his chest. It wasn't attraction, or not just attraction. It was recognition. Here was someone who understood the same darkness he lived with, who moved in the same shadows, who didn't flinch from hard truths. Come on, Lyra said, straddling her motorcycle again. I know a place we can hole up and examine the compass. Neutral ground, or as neutral as it gets in Ascendium. Lead the way. As they roared back out into the rain-soaked night, Kael reflected on the strange turns life took. 12 hours ago, his biggest problem was a curse slowly eating him alive. Now he had a curse, a mysterious partner with secrets of her own, magical government forces on his tail, and a quest for an artifact that might save or damn them both. His family wouldn't approve. The Mordain consortium didn't partner with unknowns. But Kael was discovering that some rules were meant to be broken, especially when the alternative was death. And perhaps, just perhaps, Lyra Ashenheart was worth the risk. The safe house was located in the Twilight District, where Ascendium's magical and mundane populations blended into a chaotic tapestry of the weird and wonderful. The building itself looked unremarkable, a 4-story walk-up wedged between a noodle shop and a store selling enchanted tattoos. But Kael's trained eye caught the defensive wards, shimmering faintly around the doorframe, the magical tripwires, and the subtle displacement charms that would make most people walk right past without noticing. Impressive, he noted as Lyra deactivated the wards with a complex series of hand gestures. I don't do things halfway. The apartment was Spartan, but functional. A worn couch, a table covered in maps and documents, walls lined with weapons that ranged from mundane firearms to magical artifacts. A laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, multiple screens displaying what looked like surveillance feeds and database searches. Make yourself at home, Lyra said, setting the compass case on the table. Coffee? Please. While she moved to the kitchen, Kael examined the maps on the table. They were marked with pins, string connecting different locations in an intricate web. Notes were scrawled in cramped handwriting, dates, names, question marks. This wasn't the casual interest of someone looking for a missing person. This was obsession. "How long have you been tracking your sister?" he asked. 6 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. Lyra returned with 2 mugs of coffee that smelled like heaven. "Not that I'm counting." "What happened?" Lyra was quiet for a moment, her fingers wrapped around her mug. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral, the tone of someone who'd told this story too many times to too many unhelpful people. "Elena, my sister, was a researcher for the Arcane Institute. Brilliant, idealistic, always believed magic could solve the world's problems." A ghost of a smile. "She was working on something she said would revolutionize magical theory. Wouldn't tell me details, classified. Then one night she calls me, terrified. Says she's discovered something dangerous, that people are after her. Tells me to trust no one." "Let me guess," Kael said. "She disappeared that night." "Vanished from a secured institute facility. No signs of struggle, no magical residue, no trace, like she just ceased to exist." Lyra's jaw clenched. "The institute claimed she'd stolen classified research and fled, issued a warrant, froze her assets. I tried to investigate, but doors kept closing. Finally realized someone powerful didn't want her found." "The Arcane Institute is government-controlled," Kael mused. "If they're involved, then we're already in deeper than we thought." Lyra set down her coffee. "Your turn. How does the heir to the Mordain consortium end up cursed?" "Fair was fair." Kael took a breath. "My family built our fortune on magical artifacts. Acquisition, authentication, occasionally liberation from their previous owners. 3 months ago, my father acquired something from a collector in Prague. A medallion. Pre-Convergence. Supposedly Celtic in origin. Let me guess. Cursed?" "Extremely. My father had it examined, declared safe, added it to our vault. I was doing inventory a week later when it called to me. I know how that sounds, but I swear the damn thing was whispering. I touched it and..." He stopped, the memory still vivid. Pain. Darkness. Something ancient and hungry pouring into his soul. "And?" Lyra prompted gently. "I woke up 3 days later. No memory of what happened. But the curse was already rooted in me. My father called in every expert that he could find. They all said the same thing. The medallion was part of a larger artifact called the Sanguine Seal. The curse is incomplete. It's seeking its source, trying to drag me to the seal." "Or drag the seal to you," Lyra said thoughtfully. Kael hadn't considered that angle. "Wonderful. I'm a magical tracking beacon. Did the experts say what the seal does?" "Vague warnings about power over life and death. The usual ominous nonsense. But they were clear on one point. If I don't find the seal and break the curse, it will consume me. I'll either die or become something else." "Something else?" "They weren't specific, probably to avoid giving me nightmares." Kael laughed darkly. "Too late for that." They sat in companionable silence, 2 people carrying impossible burdens. Outside, the city hummed with life. Cars and carpets, magical energy and neon lights, a million souls navigating the chaos. "We should examine the compass," Lyra finally said. The Corsair's compass was a thing of beauty. Brass and silver worked in intricate patterns, with a crystal face that seemed to hold depths of its own. Runes circled the edge, pulsing with soft blue light. "Do you know how to activate it?" Kael asked. "Blood magic, of course." Lyra pulled a knife from her belt. "It needs a sample from whoever's searching, plus a clear mental image of what you're looking for." "Together then, since we're both searching?" Lyra nodded. She pricked her finger, letting a drop of blood fall onto the compass. Kael did the same. Where their blood mingled, the runes flared bright. "Think of what you're looking for," Lyra instructed. "The Sanguine Seal." Kael closed his eyes, pulling up every detail he'd learned. The seal, his curse, his salvation. He felt Lyra's presence beside him, her breathing steady, and somehow their thoughts seemed to synchronize. The compass spun wildly, then locked into place. The crystal face shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at a map. A holographic projection showing Ascendium, with a bright point of light in the northern districts. The Obsidian Towers, Kael breathed. That's corporate headquarters for Vex Industries, Lyra finished. The same Vex who was at the auction. Can't be a coincidence. In our line of work, there are no coincidences. Lyra studied the projection. Vex is into everything. Magical weapons, experimental enchantments, rumored to have government contracts for questionable research. Kael's mind raced. If the seal is in Vex's headquarters, we're talking about penetrating one of the most secure facilities in Ascendium. Impossible for most people, Lyra agreed. Good thing we're not most people. Their eyes met, and Kael saw the same wild determination he felt reflected back. This was insane, dangerous, probably suicidal. He grinned. When do we start? Tomorrow night. I'll need time to gather intelligence, plan infiltration routes. Lyra was already moving to her laptop, fingers flying across keys. You'll need to access your corporate resources without alerting your family. Can you do that? Please. I've been embezzling from my trust fund since I was 16. Embezzling from your own trust fund? It's only embezzlement if someone notices. Lyra actually smiled. You're strange, Mordain. So I've been told. They worked through the night, planning and preparing. Lyra had an impressive network of contacts, hackers, information brokers, ex-enforcers with grudges. Kael brought financial resources and access to magical items from his family's collection. Slowly, a plan took shape. Somewhere around 3 a.m, sustained by terrible coffee and determination, Kael found himself watching Lyra as she studied building schematics. She'd pulled her hair free from its braid, and it fell in dark waves around her face. Her brow furrowed in concentration, and she had an unconscious habit of biting her lower lip when deep in thought. Beautiful, dangerous, completely off limits given their current situation. His curse chose that moment to flare again, pain lancing through his chest. He gasped, doubling over. Lyra was at his side instantly. How bad? Bad. The room spun. It's accelerating. The experts said proximity to the seal would make it worse. Can you make it to tomorrow night? Have to. Kael gritted his teeth, riding out the wave of agony. No choice. Lyra's hand found his, gripping tight. Her touch was an anchor, something solid to hold on to while his body tried to tear itself apart. Gradually, the pain receded to its usual background simmer. Thank you, he managed. Don't thank me yet. We might both die tomorrow. Optimistic. Realistic. But she hadn't let go of his hand. You should rest. Take the bed. I'll keep watch. I couldn't. Kael. His name and her voice stern but not unkind. You're cursed. You need rest more than I do. Besides, I'm too wired to sleep. He was too exhausted to argue. The bedroom was small but clean, the bed surprisingly comfortable. Kael lay down, meaning to rest for just a few minutes, but exhaustion dragged him under like a tide. He dreamed. In the dream, he stood in a vast chamber carved from black stone. At its center, on a pedestal of bone, sat the Sanguine Seal, a circular artifact covered in runes that seemed to writhe and shift. It called to him, sweet and terrible, promising power and damnation in equal measure. And standing beside the seal was a figure in shadows, watching him with eyes that burned like coals. Soon, the figure whispered, soon you'll come to me. And then, Kael Mordain, you'll understand what you truly are. He woke with a gasp, sheets soaked with sweat. Dawn light filtered through the window. From the other room he heard voices, Lyra and someone else. Kael rose quietly, pulling on his rumpled shirt. He moved to the doorway and paused. A man stood in the living room, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of effortless good looks that belonged on magazine covers. He wore Enforcer tactical gear, with the easy confidence of someone who'd earned the right to wear it, and he was standing very close to Lyra, his hand on her shoulder, his expression concerned and familiar. You can't keep doing this, Lyra, the man was saying, working alone, taking these risks. I'm fine, Marcus. You're not fine, you're obsessed. Elena wouldn't want you to destroy yourself looking for her. Don't, Lyra's voice was sharp. Don't tell me what Elena would want. You didn't know her like I did. I know you. And I know this path leads nowhere good. Kael cleared his throat. Both of them turned, and he saw Lyra's expression shift. Surprise, then something that might have been guilt. Marcus, this is Kael Mordain. Kael Marcus Chen. He's an old friend. Enforcer, Kael noted, taking in the gear. You work for Sanctum. Marcus's expression hardened. I do, which is why I'm here. Lyra, you were spotted at the raid last night. There's a warrant out for your arrest. There's always a warrant for my arrest. This is different. They're calling you a terrorist collaborator, saying you were working with Vex. That's insane. I was trying to steal from him. I know that. You know that. But the official story is that you and Mordain here are working for Vex, and the raid was a cover for you to steal the compass for him. Kael felt cold. Someone's setting us up. Obviously. Marcus looked at him with barely concealed hostility. And you led them right to her. The Mordain Consortium is already under investigation for artifact smuggling. Now Sanctum thinks you've gone full criminal. I am full criminal, Kael pointed out. That's not exactly news. It is when they're issuing kill-on-sight orders. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kill-on-sight? Lyra repeated. Marcus, that's extreme, I know. Which is why I'm here. Officially, I'm supposed to bring you both in. Unofficially. He glanced between them. Lyra, what have you gotten yourself into? Nothing I can't handle. You can't handle Sanctum. No one can. Marcus's voice softened. Come in voluntarily. I'll make sure you're treated fairly. We'll sort this out. And the compass? Evidence. It'll be confiscated. Then no deal. Lyra crossed her arms. I need that compass, Marcus. For what? This insane quest to find Elena. She's gone, Lyra. Accept it and move on. The slap echoed in the small apartment. Marcus touched his reddening cheek, eyes wide with shock and hurt. Lyra's hand trembled, but her voice was steady. Get out. Lyra, I said get out. And if you come back, it better be as a friend, not an enforcer. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Lyra's expression stopped him. He glanced at Kael one last time, a look that promised violence if anything happened to her, then left without another word. The door clicked shut. Silence descended. Ex-boyfriend? Kael ventured. Something like that. Lyra rubbed her temples. We trained together at the academy. He went legitimate. I didn't. He cares about you. That doesn't give him the right to tell me to abandon my sister. Her voice cracked slightly. Elena is alive. I know it. I feel it. Kael understood that kind of certainty. It was the same certainty that told him the seal was waiting, that his curse had a purpose. I believe you. Lyra looked at him surprised. You do? I've learned to trust my instincts. They've kept me alive this long. He moved to the window, checking the street below. But Marcus is right about one thing. We're in more danger than we thought. Someone's orchestrating this, using Sanctum as a weapon. Who has that kind of power? In Ascendium? Short list, but a terrifying one. Kael ticked them off on his fingers. The Arcane Council, they oversee all magical governance. The Corporate Alliance, my family's consortium included. And the Shadow Syndicates, the major crime families. So, basically everyone who matters. Welcome to high-stakes politics. Lyra grabbed her jacket, checking her weapons with practiced efficiency. We move tonight then, before they tighten the noose. Agreed, but we need backup. Do you trust any of your contacts enough? One. Maybe. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then dialed. After 3 rings, someone picked up. Ash, you have exactly 3 seconds to convince me why I shouldn't hang up on you. The voice was female, sharp, with a British accent that could cut glass. Because I'm about to do something monumentally stupid and I need a hacker, Lyra said. A long pause. How stupid are we talking? Breaking into Vex Industries, stupid. Bloody hell, Ash. You don't do things by halves, do you? A sound of typing. What's the job? Get us past their security systems. We'll handle the physical infiltration. We? You found a partner. Did hell freeze over? Lyra glanced at Kael. Temporary alliance. Long story. Those are always the best kind. Fine. But you owe me big. And I mean big. I'm thinking that bottle of 1947 Chateau de Chem you stole from the French minister's collection. Deal. Send me the details. I'll see what I can do. But Ash, Vex Industries has killed people for less than what you're planning. Be careful. Careful is boring. Careful keeps you alive. The line went dead. Kael raised an eyebrow. Friend of yours? Raven. Best hacker in Ascendium, possibly the continent. Mostly works for herself. Occasionally helps me when the job is interesting enough. And she wants a bottle of wine you stole? It's a very good wine. I don't doubt it. They spent the day preparing. Lyra disappeared for a few hours and returned with weapons, climbing gear, and tactical suits that could deflect magical attacks. Kael made discreet calls, liquidating assets and creating false trails to confuse anyone tracking their finances. By evening, they were as ready as they'd ever be. The obsidian towers dominated Ascendium's northern skyline, 100 stories of black glass and steel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Vex Industries occupied the top 20 floors, and their security was legendary. Magical wards, armed guards, and automated defense systems that could turn an intruder into ash in seconds. Kael and Lyra crouched on a rooftop across the street, watching the building through enhanced binoculars. Raven says she can give us a 10-minute window, Lyra said, checking her comm device. She'll loop the security cameras and disable the automated defenses, but the human guards and magical wards are all us. 10 minutes to break in, find the seal, and get out. Kael shook his head. Impossible. You say that like it's a bad thing. Lyra grinned, and in that moment she looked younger, more alive. The danger excited her. Kael realized he was smiling too. You're a bad influence, Ashenheart. You're just figuring that out? Ready? Always. They crossed to the towers using a combination of parkour and sheer audacity, reaching the building's west face. The first obstacle was a sheer wall of glass with no handholds. Lyra pulled out what looked like gloves embedded with tiny mechanical spiders. Climbing enhancers, military grade, try not to fall. Thanks for the vote of confidence. They scaled the wall in tandem, their enhanced gloves finding purchase on the impossible surface. 50 stories up, the wind buffeted them like angry fists. Kael's curse throbbed in time with his heartbeat, growing stronger with every floor they climbed. The seal was close. He could feel it calling. At the 75th floor, they reached a maintenance window. Lyra produced a glass cutter, working with surgical precision. Seconds later, they were inside, dropping into a darkened hallway. Raven, we're in, Lyra whispered into her comm. Good. You've got 9 minutes, 43 seconds. The seal's signature is on the 98th floor, northwest corner. Private lab. Perfect. What's not perfect? There are 15 guards between you and it. Oh, and something's weird about that lab's magical signature. It's pulsing, like it's alive. Kael and Lyra exchanged glances. We've come this far, Kael said. Then let's finish it. They moved like ghosts through the building, Lyra's combat training and Kael's telekinetic abilities making them a formidable team. Guards went down silently, unconscious before they knew what hit them. Magical wards were bypassed with a combination of Kael's knowledge and Lyra's brute force approach. The 98th floor was different. The air itself felt thick, charged with dark energy. The walls were lined with containment cells, each holding magical artifacts that hummed with power. And at the end of the corridor, a massive door carved with runes that seemed to writhe in the dim light. That's it, Kael breathed. His curse was screaming now, a chorus of pain and longing. Lyra gripped his arm. Kael, your eyes. What? They're glowing. Silver, are you okay? Was he? The pain was almost unbearable, but beneath it was something else. Anticipation. Like coming home after a long journey. I'm fine. Let's move. The door's lock was complex, part mechanical, part magical. While Lyra worked on the physical components, Kael tackled the magical wards. Sweat beaded his forehead as he unraveled the intricate spellwork, his curse somehow making him more sensitive to the magical energies. Got it, Lyra said just as Kael disabled the final ward. The door swung open. The lab beyond was vast, cathedral-like. Magical circles were etched into the floor, glowing with sickly green light. Equipment that belonged in a hospital mixed with arcane artifacts that belonged in nightmares. And at the center, on a platform surrounded by containment fields, sat the Sanguine Seal. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a circular artifact of dark metal and crystal, covered in runes that pulsed with red light like a beating heart. Just looking at it made Kael's curse sing with recognition. "Is that it?" Lyra whispered. "Yes." Kael started forward, drawn like iron to a magnet. "Wait." Lyra grabbed his arm. "Look." Around the platform, partially hidden in shadow, were containment pods. Through their transparent surfaces, Kael could see people, a dozen or more, suspended in some kind of magical stasis. Their eyes were open, glowing with the same silver light that now filled his own. "What the hell?" Lyra moved closer to examine the pods. Then she gasped. "Kael, this one, it's Elena," a voice said from behind them. They spun. Standing in the doorway was Vex himself, a man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of smile that promised pain. He wasn't alone. 20 armed guards flanked him, weapons trained on Kael and Lyra. "I must say, I'm impressed," Vex continued, stepping into the lab. "Most people die attempting to infiltrate my building. But you two, you made it all the way. Of course we let you. Let us?" Lyra's guns were already in her hands, though she hadn't fired. Not yet. The compass was bait, the auction, a test. I needed to see who was desperate enough for the seal to risk everything. Vex's eyes fixed on Kael. "And you, young Mordain, exceeded expectations. Tell me, how does it feel? The curse awakening inside you?" Kael's hands clenched. "What do you want?" "The same thing your father wanted when he arranged for you to touch that medallion. Power." Vex gestured to the seal. "The Sanguine Seal doesn't just grant power over life and death. It creates vessels, conduits for an ancient magic that predates the Convergence. Your father understood this. He sacrificed you to create a perfect vessel." The words hit like a physical blow. "You're lying." "Am I? Why else would the great Richard Mordain acquire a cursed artifact? Why else would he conveniently ensure you were the one to inventory it?" Vex laughed. "Your father made a deal with me. You become the vessel, and together we unlock the seal's true power. He gets immortality. I get control over the most potent magical force in existence." "No." But even as Kael denied it, pieces clicked into place. His father's lack of concern about the curse, the way he dismissed every expert's warning. The cold calculation in his eyes when Kael announced he was seeking the seal. He'd been betrayed by his own blood. "And Elena?" Lyra's voice was ice. "What did you do to her?" "Ah, yes. Dr. Ashenheart. Brilliant researcher. She discovered what we were doing, creating vessels, experimenting with the seal's power. So, we made her part of the experiment." Vex's smile widened. "She's alive, as you can see, suspended, waiting. When we activate the seal, all the vessels will awaken, and their combined power will reshape reality itself." "You're insane," Kael said. "I'm visionary. There's a difference." Vex made a gesture, and the guards advanced. "Now, you have a choice. Become part of something greater, or die here. I'm hoping you choose wisely." Lyra looked at Kael. In her eyes he saw calculation, determination, and something that might have been trust. Together? Together. They moved as one. Lyra's guns barked, her shots precise and devastating. Kael unleashed his telekinesis with a force he'd never attempted, sending guards flying like ragdolls. But there were too many. And more were coming. A guard's stun shot caught Lyra in the side. She went down hard. "Lyra!" Kael was at her side instantly, shields of telekinetic force deflecting incoming fire. "I'm okay," she gasped. "Yo, the seal. We have to destroy it." "We can't. Not without killing everyone in those pods." "Then we take it. Run. Figure it out later." It was a terrible plan. It was also their only option. Kael reached out with his telekinesis, trying to grab the seal, but the moment his power touched it, the artifact reacted. The containment field shattered. The seal rose into the air, pulled toward Kael like a comet drawn to its sun. And then it touched his chest. The world exploded in silver light. Pain. Ecstasy. Power. Knowledge pouring into his mind like a flood. Memories that weren't his. Visions of ancient times when magic ruled and gods walked the earth. He saw the seal's creation, forged from the blood of the first mages to bind a primordial force. He saw it shatter, pieces scattered across time and space. He saw his own father making a deal with demons wearing human faces. And he saw what the seal wanted from him. To complete the curse, to become the vessel, to let the ancient power consume him entirely. No. With every ounce of will, Kael fought. He felt Lyra's hand in his, when she grabbed him, and used it as an anchor. The pain was unbearable, his body burning from the inside out, but he held on. The seal pulsed against his chest, trying to merge, to complete the bond. Kael did the only thing he could think of. He ripped the seal away from himself with his telekinesis, tearing it free with a scream that might have been his or the seal's or both. The artifact fell to the floor, cracked and smoking. All around them the pods began to open. The people inside gasped awake, the silver fading from their eyes, including Elena! Lyra was running before Kael could stop her, catching her sister as she stumbled from the pod. But Vex was screaming orders, guards flooding the room, and Kael could feel it, the building's automated defenses coming back online, Raven's window closing. They had seconds. "We have to go!" Kael grabbed the damaged seal. It burned his hands, but he held on, and pulled Lyra toward the emergency exit. The others, "We'll die if we don't move now." Behind them the freed vessels were running, chaos erupting. Guards didn't know who to shoot. Vex was shouting contradictory orders. It was beautiful chaos. Kael, Lyra, and Elena ran. They made it to the 75th floor before the building's defenses activated. Magical barriers slammed down, cutting off exits. Automated turrets emerged from walls, tracking their movement. "Jump!" Kael didn't give them time to question, just grabbed them both and leaped through the window. Glass shattered. Wind screamed. Ascendium's lights blurred into streaks as they fell. Kael's telekinesis strained to its limits, slowing their descent just enough that when they hit the rooftop across the street, it hurt like hell but didn't kill them. They lay gasping, broken glass around them, sirens wailing in the distance. That, Elena managed, was insane. Lyra laughed, half hysterical. "Welcome back, sis." Kael clutched the cracked seal to his chest, feeling the curse inside him shifting, changing, not cured, not completed. Something in between, a strange equilibrium. Above them, the obsidian towers blazed with light and fury. They'd made powerful enemies tonight. Everything was worse than before. But somehow lying on that rooftop with Lyra beside him and her sister alive, Kael felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The safe house felt crowded with 3 people. Lyra Ashenheart was a softer version of her sister. Same storm gray eyes, same sharp features. But where Lyra was all edges and controlled violence, Elena radiated a gentleness that even 6 months of captivity hadn't entirely erased. She sat wrapped in blankets, hands wrapped around tea that had long gone cold, while Lyra hovered nearby with the protective intensity of a mother bear. Kael watched from across the room, the cracked Sanguine Seal resting on the table between them, like an unexploded bomb. "Tell me everything," Lyra said for the 3rd time. "What were they doing to you?" Elena's hands trembled. "Experiments. Vex was trying to create vessels for the seal's power. He needed people with specific magical signatures, compatible resonances. I was one of 12 researchers he kidnapped. The others," she shook her head. "Some didn't survive the initial binding process." "Binding process?" "They injected us with fragments of the seal, literal pieces of it, ground into liquid form. It was indescribable, like having fire poured into your veins." Elena looked at Kael. "You have a fragment inside you, don't you?" "I can sense it." "The medallion my father gave me." The words tasted like betrayal. "It's broken off from the seal. And the curse is the fragment trying to reunite with the whole." "Yes, that's what happened to all of us." Elena's expression turned distant. "We were kept in stasis, suspended between life and death. Vex was waiting for something, the right alignment, the proper conditions. He kept talking about the awakening, when all the vessels would activate simultaneously and channel enough power to..." She stopped, paling. "To what?" Lyra pressed. "To tear down the barrier between our world and what lies beyond. He wanted to bring something through, something ancient and terrible that shouldn't exist in our reality." The room went very quiet. "What kind of something?" Kael asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. He called them the primordials, the beings that existed before the Convergence, before magic and technology separated, pure power given form and hunger. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "In the stasis, I could feel them, waiting, hungry. They've been waiting for millennia for someone to open the door. And Vex wants to let them in? Lyra looked incredulous. Why? Because they promised him godhood in return. Power beyond anything imaginable. Elena laughed bitterly. He actually believed they'd honor that bargain. Kael stood pacing. His curse was quieter now, the seal's proximity creating a strange equilibrium, but he could feel it shifting, changing. If what you're saying is true, then just destroying the seal isn't enough. We need to... His phone rang. At 3 a.m, that meant nothing good. The screen showed his father's private number. Kael stared at it, rage and hurt warring inside him. Lyra caught his expression, read it instantly. Don't answer. But he had to know. Had to hear it from the man himself. He answered. Hello, Father. Kael. Richard Mordain's voice was smooth, cultured, completely devoid of warmth. I've been hearing interesting things about your activities tonight. I'm sure you have. Did Vex call you personally, or did you hear about it through your other criminal contacts? A pause. When his father spoke again, there was an edge to his voice. So you know. That you cursed your own son, sold me to a madman for the promise of power. Yes, I figured it out. Congratulations, you've made betrayal an art form. Don't be dramatic, it's unbecoming. Papers rustled in the background. The curse was always meant to be temporary. Once you merged with the seal, you would have transcended such mortal limitations. You would have become something greater. I would have become a puppet for ancient demons. Primordials, actually. And they're not demons, they're sources of pure power. Imagine what the Mordain Consortium could accomplish with that kind of force backing us. We could reshape the world economy, control governments, become the most powerful family in history. The casual way he discussed it, like it was a business proposition instead of trafficking his son's soul, made Kael's blood boil. And the fact that it might have destroyed my soul didn't concern you? Souls are overrated. Power is eternal. Richard's tone shifted, becoming almost paternal. Come home, Kael, bring the seal. We can still salvage this. The curse is incomplete. You rejected the full binding, but with proper preparation we can try again. This time you'll be ready. You're insane. I'm realistic. The world is changing, Kael. The Convergence was just the beginning. Those who control the new sources of power will rule. Those who don't will be crushed. I'm giving you the opportunity to be on the winning side. By destroying myself? By evolving beyond the limitations of ordinary humanity. Why settle for being a man when you could be a god? Kael looked at Lyra and Elena, at their expressions of horror and disgust. These were people who understood loyalty, sacrifice, love. His father understood only power. I have a better idea, Kael said quietly. I'm going to destroy the seal. Then I'm going to expose every illegal deal you've ever made. And then I'm going to watch as the empire you've built crumbles around you. You wouldn't dare. You'd destroy our family name. The family name you destroyed the moment you sacrificed me for profit. Goodbye, Father. He hung up. His hands were shaking. Lyra stood, crossed to him, took his hands in hers. That couldn't have been easy. It was surprisingly satisfying, actually. Kael laughed, though it came out shaky. I'm now officially disowned, penniless, and hunted by both the government and my own family. Wonderful. Not penniless, Lyra corrected. You embezzled, remember? True. I'm a well-funded fugitive. Elena cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we have larger problems. If Vex is still planning to activate the seal, he'll need all the fragments. That means he'll come after you, Kael, and anyone else who was injected. How many fragments are there total? 13. The medallion you touched was 1. I was injected with another. The 11 other researchers each carry 1, and Vex has the main seal body, which contains the master fragment. Kael looked at the cracked artifact on the table. This isn't the main seal? No. That's a focusing crystal. It resonates with the fragments and draws them together. You damaged it when you tore it away, which is probably the only reason you're still alive and in control. So we need to find the other vessels before Vex does, Lyra said. Protect them. Remove their fragments somehow. It's not that simple. Elena stood on shaky legs, moving to examine the cracked crystal. The fragments can't be removed without killing the host. They've bonded at a cellular level, but... She tilted the crystal, light refracting through its cracks in strange patterns. If we could shatter the main seal, the actual artifact, not this crystal, the fragments would destabilize, the curse would break. Along with killing everyone who carries a fragment, Kael finished. Exactly. So we're back to an impossible situation. Save the vessels or destroy the seal. Can't do both. Lyra was studying the crystal with intense focus. What if we could interrupt the binding? Elena, you said the fragments are trying to reunite with the whole. What if we gave them something else to reunite with? I don't follow. A decoy. A false seal that mimics the magical signature of the real one. If we could create something that resonates like the seal, the fragments might try to bond with it instead. Elena's eyes widened. That's actually brilliant. Theoretically possible. But we'd need a master artificer, someone with the skill to forge something that complex. And even then, the materials alone would be... I know someone, Kael interrupted. Thaddeus Grimm. He's an artificer who owes me several favors. Also, he's clinically paranoid and lives in a fortress, which makes him perfect for our current situation. Can we trust him? Lyra asked. As much as we can trust anyone, which is to say, barely. Lyra grinned. My favorite kind of ally. They spent the rest of the early morning hours planning. Elena provided technical specifications for the seal's magical signature, while Lyra mapped routes to Grimm's workshop. Kael made discreet calls, liquidating more assets and setting up false trails. Somewhere around dawn, exhaustion caught up with Elena. She fell asleep on the couch, and Lyra tucked a blanket around her with a tenderness that made Kael's chest ache. You're good with her, he said quietly. She's my whole world. Lyra settled into the chair beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. When she disappeared, it felt like someone cut out my heart. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just this endless void of not knowing. But you kept going, kept searching. What else could I do? Give up? Let her become another missing person statistic? Lyra's jaw tightened. I knew she was alive. Sisters know these things. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint Ascendium's skyline in shades of gold and rose. Despite everything, the danger, the betrayals, the impossible odds, Kael felt oddly content. Can I ask you something personal? Lyra said. Haven't we already crossed the personal boundary? We did break into a corporate fortress together. She smiled. Fair point. Why did you really become a criminal? With your family's wealth and connections, you could have done anything legitimate. Kael considered the question. Would you believe me if I said I was rebelling? Everybody rebels. Not everybody becomes one of Ascendium's most wanted. True. He thought about it. Really thought. I wanted to prove I was more than my father's heir. That I had value beyond the family name and money. In the criminal underworld, reputation is everything. You earn it through skill, intelligence, ruthlessness. It's honest in a way the corporate world never is. Honest criminals, that's a contradiction. Is it? At least in my world, everyone knows the rules. You make deals, you honor them, or face consequences. There's a code. But in legitimate business, people smile while they stab you in the back, destroy lives with paperwork, and call it progress. You're a philosopher thug. I prefer morally flexible intellectual. Lyra laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. You're strange, Kael Mordain. You've mentioned that before. It bears repeating. Their eyes met, and Kael felt that same magnetic pull he'd felt at the auction. Lyra was beautiful. That had been obvious from the start. But it was more than physical attraction. She was sharp, capable, fiercely loyal, and completely unimpressed by his wealth or status. She treated him like an equal, a partner. When had that become so intoxicating? Lyra, he started, not sure what he was going to say. The window exploded inward. Kael's combat instincts took over. He threw himself over Lyra, telekinetic shields springing up to deflect the glass shards. Behind them, Elena screamed. Through the broken window, figures rappelled down, Sanctum enforcers in full tactical gear, weapons drawn and glowing with magical charge. Kael Mordain, Lyra Ashenheart, you're under arrest. How did they find us? Lyra was already moving, grabbing her weapons. Marcus, Elena said from the couch, holding up a small device. "I'm sorry. When I woke up in the pod, this was implanted in my arm. A tracker. I didn't know—" "Not your fault." Lyra's expression was grim. "Kael, the seal." He grabbed the cracked crystal just as the first enforcers crashed through the door. The apartment erupted in chaos, spellfire and gunshots, shouted orders, and breaking furniture. Kael unleashed his telekinesis, using furniture as projectiles. Lyra's marksmanship was surgical, taking down enforcers with precision shots. But there were too many, and they kept coming. "Fire escape!" Lyra shouted, dragging Elena toward the window. They crashed out onto the metal stairs, sliding down through a hail of spellfire. The enforcers followed, relentless. Kael threw up shields, deflecting attacks, but his curse was flaring from the exertion. Pain lanced through his chest. "Keep moving!" Lyra was practically carrying Elena now, her sister still weak from months of captivity. They hit the street running. Ascendium was waking up, early morning traffic, pedestrians on their way to work, the normal chaos of city life. The enforcers didn't care. Spellblast tore through the crowd, people screaming and diving for cover. "This way!" Kael led them into the subway entrance, down into the tunnels where magic and technology intersected in strange ways. The walls were covered in running lights and arcane sigils, trains powered by a combination of electricity and enchantment. A train was pulling into the station. They sprinted for it, dodging panicked commuters. The doors were closing. Lyra threw Elena through the gap, then dove after. Kael followed, his shoulder catching the closing door with painful force. He tumbled inside just as the train lurched into motion. Through the window he saw Marcus Chen standing on the platform, his expression unreadable. Then they were in the tunnel, darkness swallowing them whole. The train car was packed with morning commuters trying very hard not to notice the three fugitives who'd just crashed aboard. Kael, Lyra, and Elena stood catching their breath, trying to look casual despite the fact that they were clearly on the run. "We can't go back to the safe house," Lyra said quietly. "Agreed. We need somewhere they won't think to look." "I might have an idea," Elena ventured. "There's a place, a community of people like me. Researchers who went underground after discovering things the Institute wanted buried. They hide in the old subway tunnels, the abandoned sections. If we can reach them, they might help," Kael finished. "Good. How do we find them?" 3 stops down, there's a maintenance access. From there, I can navigate." The train rumbled through the darkness, and Kael found his mind racing. They'd lost the safe house, their resources were dwindling, and every major power structure in Ascendium wanted them dead or captured. But they had the seal. They had a plan. And against all odds, they had each other. Lyra caught him looking at her and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing. Just thinking." "Dangerous habit." "I'm a dangerous man." "That's debatable." Despite everything, Kael smiled. 3 days ago, he'd been slowly dying, alone in his misery. Now he was actively dying, hunted by multiple factions, and somehow happier than he'd been in years. Maybe Lyra was right. Maybe he was strange, or maybe he just found something worth fighting for. Little did our heroes know the real danger was just beginning. Because in a darkened office overlooking Ascendium, Richard Mordain was making phone calls. And when Richard Mordain made phone calls, people died. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again. The maintenance tunnel smelled like mildew and old magic. Elena led them through the darkness with surprising confidence, her hand trailing along the wall, fingers reading the subtle marks left by those who'd passed before. "Here," she said, stopping at what looked like a blank wall. Kael saw nothing special about it, but Elena pressed her palm flat against the concrete, and suddenly runes flared to life, a hidden door disguised by illusion magic so sophisticated it could fool even magical sensors. The door swung open, revealing a staircase leading down into deeper darkness. "After you," Lyra said, gun drawn. They descended into what Elena called the Undercroft, a hidden community built in the forgotten spaces beneath Ascendium. What had once been service tunnels and abandoned subway platforms had been transformed into something that resembled a post-apocalyptic university. Laboratories cobbled together from salvaged equipment lined the walls, living spaces carved into the rock. A central gathering area where people sat in clusters, debating theories and equations, with the fervor of monks discussing scripture. These were the exiles, researchers, mages, scientists who'd discovered truths too dangerous for the powers above. They lived in shadows, pursuing knowledge for its own sake, free from corporate or government oversight. A woman approached, elderly, with wild white hair and eyes that saw too much. "Elena, we'd heard rumors you were freed." "Professor Winters." Elena hugged the woman. "Thank you for keeping my things safe. Your research was too valuable to destroy." Winters turned her penetrating gaze on Kael and Lyra. "And these are your rescuers?" "Partners," Elena corrected. "We need help." They gathered in what passed for a conference room, a space carved from rock, lit by floating orbs of magical light. Over the next hour, Elena and Kael explained everything. The seal, the vessels, Vex's plan, the need for a decoy. The assembled researchers listened with the intense focus of people for whom knowledge was both weapon and shield. "Creating a false seal is theoretically possible," Professor Winters said, her fingers steepled. "But the materials alone. You'd need celestial silver, crystallized time essence, and a power source that could sustain a magical resonance for at least 72 hours. "I can get the silver and crystal," Kael said. "But a power source." One of the younger researchers, a woman with purple hair and circuit board tattoos, spoke up. "There's a reactor core in the old Metro Station 7, abandoned after the Convergence, but still active. It runs on pure magical energy. We've been monitoring it for years, but never dared approach. Too dangerous." "How dangerous?" Lyra asked. "The kind where reality gets unstable. Time loops, spatial distortions, occasionally tentacles from other dimensions." "Occasionally tentacles," Lyra repeated flatly. "Only on Tuesdays." "Today's Thursday," Kael noted. "Then you should be fine." Lyra looked at Kael. "Your life has gotten really weird." "Says the woman who climbed a 100-story building to steal a cursed artifact." "Fair point." Professor Winters cleared her throat. "If you can retrieve the reactor core, we can build your decoy. But understand, this is experimental magic at its most dangerous. The decoy might work. It might explode. It might open a portal to somewhere unpleasant. We won't know until we try." "So basically like everything else in my life lately," Kael said. "When can we start?" "Now. But you'll need someone who understands the reactor systems." Winters nodded to the purple-haired woman. "Zara, you're going with them." "Seriously?" Zara looked both thrilled and terrified. "I mean, yes, Professor." "Try not to die. You still owe me a dissertation." "I'll do my best." They prepared quickly. Zara gathered equipment while Elena insisted on coming, despite still being weak. Lyra tried to argue, but Elena's glare, identical to her sister's, ended the debate. "We're in this together," Elena said firmly. "Besides, I know the reactor specifications better than anyone." "She gets that from me," Lyra muttered. "The stubborn martyr complex." Metro Station 7 was a 20-minute walk through the Undercroft's tunnels. The deeper they went, the stranger the surroundings became. The walls here weren't just concrete and rock. They shifted, showing glimpses of other times, other places. Kael saw a flash of what looked like ancient Rome, then a futuristic cityscape, then something that hurt to look at. "The Convergence left scars," Zara explained, noticing his expression. "Places where reality is thin. This deep, you're walking between worlds." "Comforting," Kael said. The reactor room was vast, a cathedral of machinery and magic, all centered around a sphere of pure energy that pulsed like a captured star. The air crackled with power, making Kael's hair stand on end. "There," Elena pointed to a control panel. "We need to carefully extract about 30% of the core's power and stabilize it in a containment matrix." "Carefully being the operative word," Zara added, "because if we destabilize the core, it could level several city blocks." "No pressure then," Lyra said. While Elena and Zara worked on the extraction, Kael and Lyra stood guard. The station had an unsettling quality. Too quiet, too still, like the air before a storm. "Can I ask you something?" Kael said quietly. "Haven't we established that personal questions are allowed? When this is over, if we survive, what will you do?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. "I haven't thought that far. Ahead. My whole life for 6 months has been finding Elena. Now that I have her back..." She shook her head. "I don't know. What about you?" "Assuming I'm not dead from the curse. I think I'm done with the family business. Maybe I'll go legitimate, or more legitimate. Start over somewhere new. The straight and narrow? You? Why not? I've tried everything else." Lyra smiled, but it was tinged with something sad. "You know we can't go back to normal lives after this. We've made too many enemies. Vex, Sanctum, your father, they won't just let us disappear. Then we don't disappear. We fight. We build something better." "We?" The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Kael met her eyes, and the truth was suddenly clear. Somewhere between the auction and now, between the chaos and the danger, he'd fallen for Lyra Ashenheart. Not just attraction, though there was plenty of that, but something deeper. She was his match in every way that mattered. "We," he confirmed. "If you'll have me as a partner. For real this time." Lyra opened her mouth to respond, but Zara's shout cut her off. "Got it. The power's contained." They turned to see Zara and Elena standing before a glowing sphere of energy suspended in a lattice of magical force. It pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat, beautiful and terrifying. "That's our power source?" Kael asked. "Yep. Enough magical energy to power a small city or create one very convincing fake seal." "Then let's—" The explosion came from behind them. The wall of the reactor room detonated inward, and through the smoke and debris, figures emerged. Not enforcers this time. These were Vex's private security, elite mercenaries, augmented with military-grade combat magic. "There's nowhere to run, Mordain." The lead mercenary's voice was amplified by magic. "Surrender the seal fragment and the vessels, and we'll make your deaths quick." "Why does everyone assume we're going to surrender?" Lyra muttered, already drawing her weapons. The fight was brutal and immediate. Mercenaries poured through the breach, spellfire and bullets filling the air. Kael threw up telekinetic shields while Lyra provided covering fire. Elena and Zara worked frantically to secure the power sphere. But these weren't ordinary thugs. These were professionals, working in coordinated teams, using tactics designed to counter exactly their abilities. A suppression grenade landed near Kael, detonating in a pulse of anti-magic energy. His telekinesis flickered, weakened. A mercenary charged, combat-enhanced strength, making him preternaturally fast. Kael barely dodged, the man's fist cratering the wall where his head had been. He countered with a knee strike, but it was like hitting concrete. The mercenary grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "Nothing personal, kid. Just business." A gunshot. The mercenary dropped Kael, clutching his knee. Lyra stood 20 feet away, gun smoking. "Thanks," Kael gasped. "We're even. I still haven't forgiven you for the motorcycle thing." "What motorcycle thing?" "You grabbed my waist too tight." "We were being chased." "Still." They fought back to back, a strange synchronicity developing. Kael would throw enemies into Lyra's line of fire. Lyra would create openings for Kael's telekinetic strikes. They moved like they'd trained together for years instead of days, but the mercenaries kept coming. "We can't hold them," Zara shouted. "There are too many." Elena looked at the reactor core, then at the power sphere, then at her sister. Her expression shifted, determination replacing fear. "Elena, no," Lyra started, but Elena was already moving. She pressed her hands to the power sphere, and suddenly light poured from her, silver and blinding, the fragment inside her resonating with the reactor's energy. "I can amplify the power," Elena said, her voice taking on an ethereal quality. "Create a shockwave that will knock them all back. But I need you to run. Now." "We're not leaving you," Lyra's voice cracked. "You have to. Someone needs to stop Vex, and I—" Elena's smile was peaceful. "I'm tired, Lyra. 6 months in that pod, I felt things, saw things. The fragment inside me, it's killing me slowly. This way I can choose how I go, protecting the people I love. No, there has to be another way." "There isn't." Elena's eyes met Kael's. "Take care of my sister. She acts tough, but she needs someone. I think you're that someone." "Elena, please." Lyra was crying now, reaching for her sister. The light grew brighter. The mercenaries realized something was wrong, started falling back. "Run!" Elena screamed. Kael grabbed Lyra, using his telekinesis to physically drag her away even as she fought him, screaming her sister's name. Zara ran ahead, clutching the equipment. Behind them, Elena Ashenheart became pure light. The shockwave hit like the wrath of gods. The entire reactor room exploded outward, a tsunami of magical energy that vaporized the mercenaries and sent Kael, Lyra, and Zara tumbling through the tunnels like leaves in a hurricane. When the world stopped spinning, they were 300 feet away, buried in debris. Kael pulled himself free, ears ringing, vision blurred. He found Zara first, unconscious but breathing. Then Lyra. She was on her knees, staring back at where the reactor room had been, where her sister had made her last stand. The tunnel had collapsed. Nothing could have survived that. Lyra! Kael reached for her. She flinched away from his touch. Don't. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but we had to. I know. Her voice was hollow. I know we had to run. I know she made her choice, I know. She stood swaying. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Kael wanted to say something, anything that would make this better. But there were no words. Elena had sacrificed herself so they could live, could continue the mission. The only way to honor that was to finish what they'd started. But first, Lyra needed time to grieve. They made their way back to the Undercroft in silence. Zara had recovered consciousness, her face pale with shock and guilt. Professor Winters met them at the entrance, took one look at their expressions, and knew. Elena? Lyra shook her head, unable to speak. Winters' face crumpled. That brilliant, selfless girl, she was one of my best students, always putting others first. She gripped Lyra's shoulder. She died saving you. Remember that. Honor it. How? Lyra's voice broke. How do I honor her when I can barely breathe? By living, by fighting, by making sure her sacrifice meant something. Over the next 2 days, they worked. Lyra threw herself into the mission with almost manic intensity, barely sleeping, barely eating. Kael watched her worry, but he understood. Grief had to go somewhere. For Lyra, it went into action. The researchers of the Undercroft rallied, using the power Elena had given them. Zara had managed to preserve a portion of the energy sphere, to construct the false seal. It was delicate work requiring precision and skill that pushed even these brilliant minds to their limits. Kael helped where he could, but mostly he stayed close to Lyra. Not speaking, not pushing, just present. A steady anchor in her storm. On the third night he found her on one of the Undercroft's observation platforms, a spot where you could see the city above through a camouflaged opening. Can't sleep? He asked quietly. Every time I close my eyes I see her. That light, her smile. Lyra's hands clenched the railing. She saved my life 100 times when we were kids, and when it mattered most I couldn't save hers. She didn't want to be saved. She wanted to save you. There's a difference. Is there? Kael stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I think when someone you love sacrifices themselves, the worst thing you can do is waste that gift. Elena gave you time, a chance. The question is what you'll do with it. Finish the mission, stop Vex, break the curse. Lyra's jaw set. Make her death mean something. Exactly. They stood in silence, watching the city lights. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared, Kael, scared that after this is over there'll be nothing left. No mission, no purpose, just emptiness. Then we'll find a new purpose, together. She looked at him, really looked at him. Why are you doing this? You could run, take your resources, disappear somewhere Vex and your father would never find you. Why stay? Because I'm falling for you. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Because when I'm with you, the curse doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a beginning. But he couldn't say that. Not now, when she was raw with grief. Because you're my partner, he said instead. And partners don't abandon each other. Something shifted in Lyra's expression. Walls coming down, armor cracking. She stepped closer and suddenly they were standing, breath to breath, her gray eyes searching his. Kael! The seal is complete! Zara's voice echoed through the Undercroft, shattering the moment. They pulled apart, the spell broken. But as they headed back to the lab, Lyra's hand found his and squeezed once. Brief. Meaningful. Progress, Kael thought. The false seal was a masterpiece of magical engineering. It looked identical to the cracked crystal they'd stolen. But this one pulsed with captured energy, programmed to mimic the resonance of the true Sanguine Seal. It should work, Professor Winters said. In theory. That's not inspiring. Kael noted. Magic rarely is. You'll need to get close enough to Vex's main seal for the fragments to sense the decoy. Once they do, they'll try to bond with it instead of the true artifact. The transition should break the curse without killing the vessels. Should. Magic is an art, not a science, young man. There are always variables. So we infiltrate Vex Industries again, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the redness of her eyes. Plant the decoy. Save the remaining vessels. And if we happen to destroy Vex in the process, that's just a bonus. I like the way you think, Kael said. I know. They prepared through the night. Weapons, gear, contingency plans. Kael liquidated the last of his hidden assets, giving Professor Winters enough money to keep the Undercroft running for years. If this went wrong, when this went wrong, because these things always did, at least Elena's people would be protected. At dawn they were ready. Lyra, Kael, and Zara, who'd insisted on coming despite everyone's protests, stood at the Undercroft's exit. Above, Ascendium was waking, unaware that in a few hours the fate of thousands might be decided. Last chance to back out, Kael told them. Pass, Lyra said. Hard pass, Zara agreed. Then let's go save the world. They emerged into morning light, 3 people against impossible odds, carrying a fake artifact and a desperate plan. You know that feeling when you're about to do something monumentally stupid, but you do it anyway, because the alternative is worse? Our heroes were intimately familiar with that feeling. Little did they know they were walking into a trap, but then they'd been walking into traps since page 1. At least they were consistent. Vex Industries looked different in daylight, less ominous, more corporate. Just another skyscraper full of people doing questionable things for large paychecks. Except this particular skyscraper housed an artifact that could tear reality apart. Ready? Kael asked, adjusting his borrowed business suit. They'd decided on a frontal approach this time. Kael would use his family name, still worth something despite his father's betrayal, to get a meeting with Vex while Lyra and Zara infiltrated from below. I was born ready, Lyra said. She wore tactical gear hidden under a maintenance worker's uniform, her weapons cleverly disguised as tools. You just focus on not dying. That's my general life strategy. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. Kael wanted to say something profound, something that captured the impossible thing growing between them. But words felt inadequate, so instead he kissed her. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent electricity through his veins in a way that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with Lyra herself. When they pulled apart, her eyes were wide with surprise. For luck, Kael said. That was... you... were about to... Lyra, who'd faced mercenaries and explosions without flinching, was actually flustered. I know. Bad timing. I just... He smiled. Wanted you to know. In case this goes wrong. Lyra's expression softened. When we survive this, we're having a serious conversation about your timing. When? I like that optimism. Shut up and go infiltrate a criminal empire. Yes, ma'am. Kael walked through the front doors of Vex Industries with the arrogant confidence of someone who'd spent his life in corporate towers. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with magical displays advertising their latest innovations in defense technology. Read weapons. I'm here to see Mr. Vex, Kael told the receptionist. Tell him Kael Mordain would like to discuss a business proposition. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. The Mordain name still carried weight. She made a call, spoke in hushed tones, then looked up with professional smile. Mr. Vex will see you. 98th floor. Of course it was the 98th floor. Where else would a supervillain conduct business? The elevator ride felt like ascending to his own execution. Kael checked the false seal one last time, hidden in a briefcase lined with suppression wards. It pulsed against his senses, resonating with the fragment inside him. The doors opened to reveal an office that screamed evil executive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive art that was probably stolen, and at the center Vex himself behind a desk of black glass. Kael Mordain. Vex smiled like a shark. I must say I didn't expect you to walk through my front door. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Why not both? Indeed. Vex gestured to a chair. Please sit. Can I offer you anything? Coffee, tea? A cure for your curse? Kael sat, projecting calm he didn't feel. Actually, I came to discuss a partnership. Oh? My father betrayed me. Your plan is falling apart. I propose we help each other. Kael leaned forward. I'll give you the fragment inside me willingly. Help you gather the others. In exchange, you ensure I survive the process and give me a position in your organization. Vex studied him with those cold, calculating eyes. What about your companions? The Ashenheart woman and the researcher? Collateral damage. I'm a pragmatist, Mr. Vex. They served their purpose. It was a gamble. Kael was betting that Vex's ego would make him believe that anyone could be bought, that loyalty was just another transaction. Vex smiled wider. You know what? I believe you. The Mordain family is notorious for prioritizing profit over sentiment. Why should you be different? He pressed a button on his desk. Besides, your father is here. Perhaps a family reunion is in order. Kael's blood went cold. The office door opened and Richard Mordain walked in, looking as composed as ever. Their eyes met and Kael saw no warmth, no regret, just cold assessment. Son, Richard said as if they were discussing quarterly earnings, I'm glad you've come to your senses. Have I? Kael kept his voice level. Every second he bought was a second for Lyra and Zara to plant the decoy. Of course, you're a Mordain. Sentiment is weakness, but survival is strength. Richard moved to stand beside Vex's desk. The two men united in their casual cruelty. When the primordials arrive, there will be a new world order. Those who helped summon them will rule. Those who opposed will be dust. And you believe these primordials will honor their agreements? Power recognizes power, Vex said. We offer them entry to this world. They offer us dominion over it. A fair trade. Below, through the suppression field around the briefcase, Kael felt the false seal pulse. The plan was working. It was drawing the fragments, creating resonance. He just needed more time. I want guarantees, Kael said. Written contracts, magical oaths. I won't be betrayed again. Smart boy, Vex said approvingly. Your father raised you well. My father raised me to be a monster. I'm just better at hiding it than he is. Richard actually laughed. See? This is the son I always wanted, not the bleeding heart who wasted time with charities and causes. A true Mordain understands that power is the only truth. Kael wanted to vomit, but he played his part, negotiating details of a partnership that would never happen, while somewhere below, Lyra was executing the real plan. Come on, he thought. Whatever you're doing, do it fast. 2 floors down, Lyra and Zara had their own problems. The lab where Vex kept the true Sanguine Seal was a nightmare of security. Guards, wards, and automated defenses that made their previous infiltration look like amateur hour. This is insane, Zara whispered, fingers flying across a hacked security terminal. Even with my override codes, we've got maybe 3 minutes before the system realizes it's been compromised. Then we work fast. Lyra checked her weapons. 3 minutes. Elena had bought them time with her life. Lyra wouldn't waste it. They moved through the corridors like shadows, taking down guards with silent efficiency. Lyra had never been this focused, this deadly. Every movement was precise, economical. Grief had refined her into a weapon. The lab door loomed ahead, covered in runes that pulsed with malevolent energy. Can you bypass it? Lyra asked. Given an hour, maybe. We have 90 seconds. Then, we go loud. Lyra pulled out an explosive charge, one of the last gifts from the Undercroft's armory. Stand back. The explosion was controlled but devastating. The door blew inward, alarms immediately shrieking. But they were through. The true Sanguine Seal sat on its pedestal, beautiful and terrible. Unlike the cracked focusing crystal, this was the real artifact. A circular disc of metal that seemed to shift between solid and liquid, covered in runes that moved like living things. And surrounding it were the remaining vessels, 10 people suspended in stasis pods, their eyes glowing silver, bodies twitching as the fragments inside them responded to the seal's call. We need to place the decoy in resonance range, Zara said, pulling out the false seal. It should create a harmonic feedback loop that... The door they'd just blown open exploded again. Marcus Chen stood in the breach, backed by a full Enforcer strike team. Lyra, stop! Marcus's face was anguished. Please, you're making this worse. Worse than letting Vex tear reality apart? Lyra didn't lower her gun. Marcus, you don't understand what's happening here. I understand you've become a terrorist, that you're trying to destroy valuable research. Valuable research? Look at them. Lyra gestured to the pods. These are people, Marcus, prisoners, victims. Vex is using them as batteries for an apocalypse. Marcus hesitated, his eyes flicking to the pods. For a moment, Lyra saw doubt. Then Vex's voice came over the intercom. Enforcer Chen, you have your orders. Eliminate the terrorists. Protect the seal. Marcus, please, Lyra said quietly. Trust me, like you used to. His finger tightened on the trigger. I can't. I'm sorry, Lyra. I'm sorry I couldn't save you from yourself. He fired. Lyra dove, the spell blast missing her by inches. Zara scrambled to plant the false seal while Lyra returned fire, her shots deliberately non-lethal. She couldn't kill Marcus, not even now, but his team had no such compunctions. Spellfire filled the lab. Zara screamed as a blast caught her shoulder, sending her sprawling. The false seal skittered across the floor, rolling toward the pedestal. Almost there. Just a few more feet. Then Marcus was on her, his enhanced strength pinning her down. I'm sorry, he said again, and actually meant it. I'm sorry. Lyra headbutted him, breaking his nose. As he reeled back, she kicked the false seal with everything she had. It rolled, bounced, and landed perfectly at the base of the true seal's pedestal. The effect was immediate. Both seals, true and false, flared with light. The fragments in the vessels began resonating, responding to the harmonic frequency. The entire lab started shaking. What did you do? Marcus demanded. Save the world. You're welcome. Upstairs, Kael felt it, the pull of the fragment inside him suddenly redirecting, drawn not to Vex's seal, but to something else. The false seal was working. He saw Vex's expression shift from smug confidence to alarm as monitors across the office started flashing warnings. What? No! The resonance is all wrong. Vex was on his feet, frantically typing commands. Someone's disrupted the binding. Richard Mordain's face went pale. The vessels are breaking free. Kael stood, pulling the briefcase close. Gentlemen, it's been educational, but I believe this is where we part ways. You betrayed us, Richard said, and for the first time Kael heard emotion in his father's voice. Rage. Your own blood. You betrayed me first. I'm just evening the score. He ran. Behind him, Vex was screaming orders. Alarms shrieked throughout the building. Kael could feel the fragments destabilizing, the curse inside him fluctuating wildly between agony and euphoria. He had to reach Lyra. The elevator was too slow. Kael went to the nearest window and did something monumentally stupid. He threw himself through it. Glass shattered. Ascendium's skyline tilted crazily. And Kael fell, using his telekinesis to slow his descent just enough that when he crashed through the window 2 floors down, it only hurt like hell instead of killing him. He tumbled into the lab where chaos reigned. Enforcers and Lyra were in a standoff, both seals pulsing with increasing intensity, the vessels beginning to wake. Kael! Lyra's face lit up with relief that made his heart clench. Miss me. Always. She threw him a spare gun. Ready to improvise? My favorite kind of plan. They fought back to back once more, a perfect unit against impossible odds. The enforcers fell back as the seal's resonance grew stronger, cracks appearing in reality itself, glimpses of the void beyond where hungry things waited. The vessels were breaking free, the fragments leaving their bodies in streams of silver light, drawn to the false seal like moths to flame. It's working, Zara shouted over the chaos. The decoy is absorbing the fragments. But something was wrong. The true seal wasn't just sitting there. It was fighting back, pulsing with dark energy, trying to maintain its hold. And then Kael understood. The false seal could draw the fragments, but it couldn't destroy them. It was just a container. To truly break the curse, someone had to... No, Lyra said, reading his expression. Don't you dare. It's the only way. Someone has to overload the connection, force the fragments to disperse completely. Not you. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Kael handed her his gun. Lyra, I've been dying since this started. At least let me die doing something meaningful. You're not dying, her voice cracked. He kissed her again properly this time, pouring everything he couldn't say into that moment, all the feelings he'd discovered too late, all the might have beens. When they pulled apart, tears were streaming down Lyra's face. "I love you," Kael said simply. "I know it's terrible timing, but I needed you to know." Then he grabbed both seals. The power that flooded through him was indescribable. Every fragment, every piece of the Sanguine Seal's broken whole, channeling through his body. It was like being unmade and remade in fire. Kael screamed. His curse flared to life, no longer trying to consume him, but to consume everything. The fragments were using him as a battleground, true seal versus false, fighting for dominance in his flesh. Kael. Lyra was trying to reach him, but the power radiating off him was too intense. Through the agony, Kael understood what he had to do. Not just overload the connection, shatter it completely. Destroy both seals at once by making them cancel each other out. It would kill him. The backlash alone would be catastrophic, but it would save everyone else. With the last of his strength, Kael forced the two seals together. Reality screamed. The explosion was silent but absolute. A wave of negation that spread outward, hitting everyone in the room. The fragments dissolved into nothing. The vessels collapsed, freed at last. The seals shattered into dust. And Kael Mordain felt his curse break. The foreign power inside him finally, mercifully gone. Then darkness took him. He woke to softness, warmth, the smell of jasmine. Lyra's face swam into focus above him, tear-stained and beautiful. "You absolute idiot," she said, but she was smiling. "You wonderful, stupid, heroic idiot." "Did it work?" His voice was barely a whisper. "The seals are destroyed. The curse is broken. The vessels are free." She pressed her forehead to his. "And you're alive. Somehow, impossibly, you're alive." "How?" "The false seal absorbed most of the backlash. Professor Winters says it acted like a magical lightning rod, channeling the energy away from you. You should be dead. Instead, you're just..." She laughed wetly. "Mostly dead. Which is better?" Kael managed a weak smile. "Mostly dead is my new goal in life." They were in the Undercroft, he realized. Safe. Hidden. He could hear voices in the distance. Zara explaining something technical to Professor Winters, other researchers debating the implications of what they'd witnessed. "The enforcers?" he asked, or scattered when the seals exploded. "Marcus?" Lyra's expression tightened. "He helped us escape, covered our retreat. I think he finally realized we were telling the truth." "And Vex?" "Arrested. Turns out destroying an artifact that was about to summon apocalyptic horrors makes you look less like a terrorist and more like a hero. Who knew?" "And my father?" Lyra's silence was answer enough. Richard Mordain had gotten away, slipping through the chaos like he always did. But his reputation was in tatters, his conspiracy exposed. The Mordain Consortium was under investigation, his assets frozen, not dead, but destroyed in every way that mattered to him. Good enough. "How long was I out?" Kael asked. 3 days. We weren't sure you'd wake up." Lyra's hand found his, gripped tight. "Don't do that again. Don't make me watch you die." "I'll try not to." "Good, because we have plans to make." "Plans?" "You said, when we survive this, we'll build something better. I'm holding you to that." She smiled, fierce and full of life. "What do you say, partner? Ready to save the world on a more regular basis?" Kael thought about it. No more curse, no more family obligations, just him and Lyra and the impossible task of making Ascendium a better place. It was insane. It was perfect. "I'm in," he said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "You let me take you on an actual date. Somewhere nice. No explosions, no fighting, no apocalyptic artifacts." Lyra laughed, the sound like music. "Deal. Though I make no promises about the explosions. They seem to follow us." "Fair enough." She leaned down, kissed him gently. When she pulled back, her gray eyes were bright with tears, and hope, and something that looked a lot like love. "Welcome back, Kael Mordain." "Good to be back." Outside the Undercroft, Ascendium continued its chaotic existence. But down in the depths, two people who'd found each other in darkness began planning their future in the light. The curse was broken. The seals were destroyed. The world was saved. And for Kael and Lyra, the real adventure was just beginning. 6 months later, the office space Lyra and Kael had leased occupied the top floor of a building in Ascendium's Twilight District, far enough from corporate scrutiny to maintain independence, close enough to civilization to access resources. The sign on the door read, Ashenheart and Mordain Investigations, specializing in the impossible. It had started as a joke. Turned out saving the world generated a certain reputation. People with problems that fell through the cracks between legal and magical came to them. Lost artifacts, cursed items, missing persons who'd disappeared into the city's shadow spaces. They were good at it. Kael brought resources, contacts, and a mind for strategy. Lyra brought combat skills, street knowledge, and a moral compass that kept them, mostly, on the right side of the law. Together, they were formidable. Kael looked up from his desk as Lyra entered, carrying 2 coffees and looking irritatingly cheerful for 6 in the morning. "New case," she announced, dropping a file on his desk. "Missing teenager. Parents say she was recruited by a cult worshipping pre-convergent spirits. Sanctum won't touch it because it's not a priority. So we make it our priority." "Exactly." She perched on the edge of his desk, close enough that he could smell her jasmine shampoo. 6 months and she still made his heart race. Also, Marcus called. Says he has information about a new magical weapons dealer operating out of the industrial quarter. Marcus is proving surprisingly useful. He's trying to make amends. I respect that. Marcus Chen had resigned from the enforcers after the Vex incident, unable to reconcile his oath to protect with the reality of government corruption. Now he worked freelance, occasionally, feeding them cases that needed attention. It was progress. "Anything else?" Kael asked. Lyra's expression turned mischievous. "Professor Winters invited us to dinner. Says she has news about a research project that might interest us." "Should I be worried?" "Always. But also intrigued." Kael stood, stretching. The absence of the curse still felt strange sometimes, like phantom pain in reverse. He was healthier than he'd been in years, no longer dying by inches, and he had Lyra. That alone made everything worth it. She stood too, and suddenly they were very close. Her hand found his, fingers interlacing with familiar ease. "You know," Kael said quietly, "when I walked into that auction 6 months ago, I was looking for a cure. And I found something better. I found you." Lyra rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "You're such a romantic." "You love it." "I love you. The romantic speeches are just a bonus." They kissed, sweet and unhurried. Outside, Ascendium was waking, a city of magic and technology, crime and wonder, where reality bent in strange ways and impossible things happened daily. It was their city now, their mission to protect it, and they were ready for whatever came next, together. And so our story ends where all good stories do, with hope, love, and the promise of more adventures to come. Kael and Lyra had faced curses, betrayal, and apocalyptic threats. Now they face something even more challenging, building a life together. But if they could survive everything that had come before, they could survive anything, even happiness. Please, like and subscribe for more. Thank you.